In the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, following the disastrous 2024 election, the controversial comedian and political commentator put MAGA on blast with 3 points. Number one, the only reason we have a peaceful transfer of power is because of Democrats. Number two, Donald Trump has indeed said and done fascistic things. And number three, the Republicans who assured the American people that Trump wouldn't be a fascist in his second term are now on notice and have an obligation to keep him in check. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got several clips to talk about in this video. I figured this was going to be an interesting episode of Real Time with Bill Maher because Maher, who in many respects gets things right about Donald Trump and has for years, he's predicted, for example, he was the first that I'm aware of to predict that Donald Trump would not leave office peacefully, which of course he didn't, even though MAGA wants you to believe otherwise. The January 6th insurrection happened. And the fact that Donald Trump later left office peacefully is like trying to downplay the Civil War or World War II because the Confederates and the Germans eventually surrendered. It's patently absurd. But Bill Maher also predicted that Donald Trump would lose the election, and he was wrong. And so I thought it'd be really interesting. You know, his episodes are usually interesting, particularly when he talks domestic politics. But this one was going to be even more so. And he said a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to. The first one being the most important point in terms of the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of this election, which is the peaceful transfer of power.
We have 2 more shows. Normally, this would be our last show, but we thought, well, we should stay on because it'll be a shit show after this because there'll be all sorts of lawsuits and the country will be in flames, which I think, let's not bury the lead. The most important thing to say about this election is the reason why we're sitting here so peacefully now is because the one party that still believes in conceding elections lost. If the other guy had won, it would be a shit show now. Let's not pass over that. We have 2.
He's right. The contrast, which I noted in I did a couple of videos about this, or at least one video, and then we actually watched the live concession speech from Vice President Harris. This point cannot be understated. And it's one of the few things that Democrats really need to hold their head high up about as we go into the second term, which is the Democratic Party is much more reliably pro-democracy. So we did not like this outcome. We do believe that Donald Trump is an authoritarian with no limiting principle and that he is surrounded by sycophants. This is an incredibly dangerous time. But Democrats loyally respected the outcome of this election. Vice President Harris has not attempted to challenge the results. She has not attempted to sue her way into the White House. She is not conspiring with President Biden and other Democrats to send false, fake slates of electors to steal the outcome. Given that she is in the position to preside over the Electoral College results, she is not trying to just unilaterally throw out the results that she doesn't like. She privately conceded to Donald Trump by way of telephone, and then she gave a formal public concession speech, which is what Hillary Clinton did in 2016, and which is what Donald Trump did not do in 2020. Donald Trump did not privately concede to President Biden. He did not formally, publicly concede to President Biden. He didn't even attend President Biden's inauguration. And he has spent 4 years relentlessly spreading the lie, the verifiable, objective lie, that he somehow won the 2020 election when in fact he lost fair and square to Joe Biden. I don't like the outcome of this election, not just because Trump is a Republican, but because I think that Donald Trump, again, is an authoritarian. But Donald Trump won this election fair and square based on everything we know. It's just Democrats didn't turn out to vote for Vice President Harris for various reasons. He won fair and square, just like Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020. The difference is only Democrats are willing to make that recognition. Republicans won't do. As a matter of fact, there are prominent Republicans who are claiming that this election is proof that the 2020 election was stolen. And when you point out the staggering contrast, well, okay, Democrats are in power now. Joe Biden is the most powerful man on earth. He is the president of the United States. He wants his party to win. Vice President Harris is the presiding officer of the Electoral College certification. Why didn't they, if they rigged the 2020 election from a position of weakness, how were they not able to rig the election in 2024 from a position of strength and institutional power? They have no answer for this. They have no answer for this. And then when you ask them, why didn't she just challenge the results or claim voter fraud? They're like, well, the outcome is too decisive. It's pure bad faith conspiracy thinking nonsense, which deserves nothing but your utter contempt. And it's coming exclusively from one party. So again, not to just hammer this home, but I think it's so important. We have to acknowledge that the total asymmetry between the two parties. And I should also say, anytime the media covers this election and talks about the concession, I think that it would be journalistic malpractice to not point out that Kamala Harris did what Donald Trump should have done, but was incapable of doing. She is better than he is. She is morally superior to Donald Trump in all ways, even if she lost the election. And I think any journalist or any member of the media who just says, yeah, she conceded without throwing that in, hey, by the way, what she did is what she should have done, which is what Donald Trump should have done in 2020, but he was too weak and stupid to do. I just think it's absolute. Be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout as people cover this election if they make a point. If CNN omits that, if MSNBC omits to point that out, Fox News, of course, will never mention that. But keep an eye on that stuff. Here's another clip from Bill Maher.
To my friends on the right, I said it to them last week. I said it to them personally, because they all have the same idea about Trump. He says a lot of shit. Okay, now you won. We'll see if your he just says shit doctrine is real or it's not. But just stop. You won. So you can afford to be magnanimous now, my right-wing friends. And understand that, when we're worried about fascism, it's because he talks like a fascist. We're not plucking it from thin air. Okay.
And again, this is really important as well, which is I've heard, as I'm sure many of you have, that Donald Trump just talks smack. And occasionally you'll even get a Republican who will go even just a little bit further and say, I don't like his rhetoric. His rhetoric is unhelpful. His rhetoric is bad. Ben Shapiro does this all the time. He says things that are bad. He says things I disagree with, but the institutions checked him last time. The institutions will check him this time. Okay, well, now you're on notice. Now you won. And as a matter of fact, Donald Trump won so convincingly, not just the presidency, but he's won control of the Senate. He has a 6-3 conservative supermajority in the United States Supreme Court, and he's very likely his party is to win the House of Representatives, because what I'm saying is that when the dust settles, more likely than not, he'll have total unified control of government in a way that we've never seen. And he is the first president to win an election in the context of Trump v. United States, the landmark Supreme Court decision, which gives sweeping immunity, criminal immunity, to rogue presidents. It was already going to be very difficult to successfully investigate and prosecute a former president of the United States, given the burdens associated with that. And now that burden is even higher. Unified control of government, criminal immunity, and now we're at his mercy. I want you to think about that. There is the only check at this point, the only real meaningful checks to Donald Trump will come from his own sense of restraint and the restraint of Republicans, because it would be a Republican Justice Department, once again, that would be in the position of either executing his demands or pushing back and saying, no, Mr. President, you can't do this. It's illegal. It would be a right-wing Supreme Court, which will now be in the position to give him what he wants, as they've often done, but not always, often, but not always, or saying, no, Mr. President, you can't do that. It would be a Republican Senate, either with his Supreme Court justice, nominees or his cabinet nominees to say, no, Mr. President, you can't do that. What I'm saying is they can't rely on other people to check Trump now. Ben Shapiro can't say, oh, the Democrats will check Trump. The Democrats will have no power unless the slim possibility is that Democrats win a razor-thin majority in the House of Representatives, in which legislatively Trump will indeed be stymied, because you have to get legislation to pass both chambers. But if it goes the way probabilistically it will, the only brake check will be from the likes of Ben Shapiro and Republicans in Congress. That's where we are. So it's all on them. Are they properly motivated to hold Trump in check? I don't know. That's what Bill Maher is getting at. Trump has said these things. He's attempted to do terrible things. And now it's all on him. It's all on him and his cult to hold him in check. That's incredibly dangerous. Personally, I'm a cynic. I don't expect Republicans, MAGA Republicans in 2024, after this long, tortured political journey that Trump has taken them on, to at this point say, no, Donald, you've gone too far. They weren't inclined to do it in the first place. Why on earth would they be inclined to do it now when his grip on the Republican Party is tighter than it's ever been? The guy is politically bulletproof, right? He's Teflon Don. He can survive impeachments, investigations, and he commands the cultish devotion of tens of millions of Americans. And he's about to become the most powerful man on earth. Creates a lot of incentives to just let him do whatever the hell he wants. And cross your fingers and hope we can get through the finish line in 4 years. That's what Bill Maher's talking about. And I hope Republicans, so-called principled conservatives, who aren't MAGA. Ben Shapiro says he's not MAGA. So many commentators out there say that they're centrist. Piers Morgan, like all these people in the media, and then of course senators and congressmen, they all say they're not in a cult. We'll see. Great point by Bill Maher. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.